Hey everybody, I got this new piece of mining gear recently that I wanted to test out and show you guys. I think this thing is really cool. It's called a gold cube, and this is everything it comes with. So this box over here is the stand. There's a bunch of pieces that go together pretty nicely. There's a pump, tube for the pump, and then the actual gold cube itself. So I got the 3-stack version. There's also a 4-stack version, and conceivably you could just keep buying stacks and stacking it up as much as you want. Personally, I think the 3-stack is probably plenty, but we'll talk about that later. So what this is a super concentrator. You can supposedly, according to the manual, run 1,000 pounds of material through this thing before you have to do a cleanup, and it concentrates it into about a coffee cup worth of material, which is astonishing. That you can imagine how much work that would save you. You do have to classify things down to 1/8 of an inch, but that's really not that bad. But let me show you how it works. So this is called a 3-stack system because there's 3 of these trays. You've got the initial top tray and then 2 of these mat trays. So the top tray here is called the slick plate, and water enters from the pump in here and it comes out of this slot here, and that the way it flows up through there makes it come out nice and smooth at just the right speed, and so you get a smooth tray of water basically. And this top section is here to split up the lighter material from the heavier material. So the light stuff will get washed away quickly, the heavy stuff will kind of drag behind, and so that's the first degree of separation is what the manual calls that. So the material will start up here, go down the plate, and fall down into that trough there. And so now let's take a look at the second tray. So the second tray is the first mat, and let me point this out. So notice how when it comes out from here, it's got this wall that it has to go around. So the material in the water comes down here and has to go around the wall, because that fits into that tray on the right here. So that little wall would be, something like that. So the material has to kind of swing around it. And that's what they call the second degree of separation, and that's the G-force separator. So here's the picture they have in the manual. So the material comes in from the slick plate and it has to go around this gate, and you get centrifugal force that pushes the heavy stuff down to the outside of this curve here. So a lot of the heavier things will stay down here at the bottom, and then the remainder will come out here onto the matting. So the matting is the rubber stuff on this second tray here, and you can see I've already used it because there's some rocks in there, but basically this is a bunch of little rubber pillars and cavities, and so the water flows over top of that, and the gold and the heavy stuff gets sort of sucked down into those little cavities and trapped as the lighter stuff flows over top of it. And then you can see that this second tray also goes down into a trough, and then that leaves us with the third tray, which is really just the same thing as the second one. You've got another one of these G-force separators, and then another set of matting, and then it goes out at the end. So you can see how you can keep stacking these, right? These last 2 trays are identical, so you can keep stacking those and get, effectively a much longer sluice that you're running through. But I guess it depends on what your material is. I mean, I haven't used it all that much, so maybe I don't have enough experience to say this, but I think the 3-stack is probably plenty, but it probably depends on what your material actually is. So that's the gist of how that thing works. So let's get it set up, and actually the first step is going to be to screen the material. So the material that I'll be running here is from the same place that I got the gold cube. It's all from Crescent Gold Mine in Dahlonega, Georgia. And this is 2 bags of their 30-to-1 super concentrate. So they take 30 gallons of their ore straight out of the mine, concentrate it down to 1 gallon. So effectively this is 60 gallons of raw ore that I'll be working with here. So that's what's in the bucket there. And what I'm doing right now is just screening that down to 1/8 of an inch. I have a purple 1/4 inch screen sitting on top of a green 1/8 inch screen, and as I go, I'll screen out the big stuff, and every time I do that, I'll check for nuggets in each of those screens. And I'll just keep doing that until I've screened everything out. The gold cube requires that you get down to 1/8 inch, but smaller is better. I do have a smaller screen. For this test, I stayed at an 1/8 inch because the source of this gold tends to be pretty coarse. So, you know, if you're going through some material that is much finer, then you could probably safely screen down to, you know, a 1/12 of an inch or something. Because they say if you do to a 1/12, then you don't get anything stuck in the matting. Like, you know, those little rocks you saw earlier, if you screen smaller, then those little rocks won't get in there. So here we are with everything set up, and I've got the pump hooked up and running off of a power supply. And the first thing you need to do here is eliminate all the air bubbles in each of these mats. Because if there's an air bubble, then you know the gold won't be able to sink into it. So you can do this several ways. Probably the easiest one is to use the pump, just like I am right now. It's actually really difficult to get rid of all the air bubbles. Maybe I'm just not doing it right, but I had a hell of a time getting them all out of there. But you know, try to get as many as you can. And now that it's together, just flip the switch, and here we go. Looks like it's running nicely. Now we're ready to start scooping in some dirt. It doesn't really matter if it's wet or dry, but here goes the first scoop. You see the slick plate really separates out the lighter stuff from the heavier stuff, and then it kind of goes zigzags down the two mats and out the end. You see at the end, by the way, I added a little catch basin to capture all this sediment so it doesn't get sucked back up into the pump. And that's really all there is to it. With each scoop, you generally want to give it a second to let the water sweep it all away, but besides that, you can pretty much feed it continuously. And then since my catch basin is just a pan, it's pretty shallow, so occasionally I have to go in and empty it out before it, you know, overflows. Of course, if you were, you know, using this at a stream or something, you wouldn't have to worry about doing this. So it only took about 20 minutes to go through that whole tub of material, which is crazy fast. I mean, if I would have panned all that by hand, it would have taken ages. But now that we're all done, I can take the contraption apart and see what we got. Now, for whatever reason, gold is notoriously difficult to see on camera. I really don't know why. It's very obvious in person, but just looking at it on here, it's less so. So I'll try to point it all out. But the cool part is with this is it pretty much is all up in here. You see there's three little pieces in the trough right there, but for the majority of them are right at the beginning of the mat. They didn't even make it to the mat. They all just kind of hung out right there, which is awfully cool. There are a few down the mat a ways, 4 or 5 inches down, but probably 95% of it was captured even before it hit the mat, so that's pretty cool. And I think that's probably because it's so coarse. You know, the finer gold is going to travel farther before it gets captured. But my material just simply doesn't have very fine gold. It's all quite coarse. Because the way they make it is that they mine it out of quartz, and they crush it down to a certain size, and so I guess just, it's not placer, right? So it hasn't been worn down to flour gold. It's straight out of the rock, basically. So that was all just out of the first tray. I looked at the second tray, but I really didn't see anything. I think it's all captured on that very first one. So again, that's kind of evidence that you don't need more than 3, in my opinion. But anyways, now we got to do a clean out, and the way you do that is you get another one of these tubs and you just dump a bunch of water on it. So you hold the mat kind of at an angle and you just splash some water on it. You could also use the pump to spray water on it. I was a little concerned that it would, you know, blow the gold all over the place, so I didn't do that. So I just stuck with this cup to begin with. Then after I got most of the material out with the cup, the other way that they recommend doing it is like this. You just hold it upside down and you just splash a bunch of water up onto it. You could also, if you have enough water, just take the whole tray and kind of slap it against the surface of the water a bunch of times. And this is all just to agitate it to get everything out. There it is. Now we just gotta pan it out. So the last step is to just pan out all these concentrates, and I'm just going to transfer them to this bucket so they're easier to pour into a pan. I feel like I'm going to spill it if I try to pour this giant thing directly into a pan. That giant tub of material reduced to only that much. Single pan. That's real nice. See, there's the gold already. I like it. So it's difficult to get good footage of panning because you gotta hold it at the right angle, and then the camera's got to be at the right angle. So I kind of missed most of it, but hopefully you can still see a little bit of it. You see the gold shaking around down there, which is really, really nice. So I do kind of a two-stage process here. Like, this is what I call the coarse panning, where I just try to get the gold out, and I'm also going to suck up a lot of the black sand too. But then I'll put that into a new pan and do the fine panning, which is, you know, to get rid of all the black sand and clean up my gold. You also notice that there's some bubbles on the water there. I added a little bit of jet dry, and you want to do that so that the gold doesn't like float away on you. If it's tiny enough, it can float on the surface tension of water, believe it or not. So here's all the gold I sucked up with my snuffer bottle, and it's real nice. I'm very pleased with this. So now I just got to do a final small pan to clear out this black sand and get my gold nice and pure. Alright, so I've cleaned up everything, and now let's see how much we got. It's 1.32 grams. Not bad. So that's everything that came out of the gold cube. But I also found all of these. So these awesome little nuggets are everything that I screened out. So a lot of these are bigger than 1/8 of an inch, and especially this guy is quite a bit bigger than 1/8 of an inch. So that's awesome. So let's add those guys in there. And that brings our total to 3.16 grams. And that's about 1/10 of an ounce, which is pretty awesome. And at today's prices, that's about $132. Now, of course, the 2 bags that I bought were $85 each, so that's $170. So I didn't make any money, but you really never should expect to make money on these sorts of things. It's mostly just for the fun whenever you buy the dirt. But still, it's not half bad. I'm actually quite excited about this, and especially this big nugget right here. That sucker is awesome. It's also neat that the cube was able to capture all of this within it didn't even hit the first mat hardly. I mean, there was a few pieces that kind of made it maybe 4 inches down the mat, but the vast majority of them was in that first G-force separator and across the top of the matting. But I'm really excited about this thing. I can't wait to take it to a stream and actually use it in the field. I'll just have to bring like a car battery or something. And actually the stand allows you to extend it so you can put a car battery on it, which is pretty nifty. But anyways, I really enjoyed doing that, and I hope you enjoyed learning about it. And you know, if this is something you're interested in, I would highly recommend getting a gold cube for yourself. Thanks a lot for watching.